Welcome, everyone. My name is Greg Tevis. I have with me today Richard Spurlock. He's the founder of Cobalt Iron. We're here today to do some technical enablement around the new solutions that we have, the offering we have under the Spectrum Protect portfolio of the Cobalt Iron capabilities. Cobalt Iron is a new and exciting and energizing way to deliver Spectrum Protect and data protection in general. There's some confusion over what Cobalt Iron is and is not. And that's understandable because there really is nothing like it in the market. And so we're going to start for a minute or two and talk about what it is, what it isn't. As we go through this session, what we're going to do is I'm going to be presenting, going through some of the enablement, and then Richard's going to take us through a couple examples, including some sizing information, and then also a quick demo of the Cobalt Iron interface. We have this example here of a vehicle, and really, Spectrum Protect with Cobalt Iron is a new delivery model for Spectrum Protect and for data protection. The analogy we're trying to make here, it's around vehicles. If you go and buy a car, take the example of Spectrum Protect, you go and purchase Spectrum Protect and hardware. You may have some assembly required, so in the analogy of the car, you might have to put on the wheels yourself, and more importantly, you have to operate that thing. You have to turn it on, you have to drive, you have to navigate it. You have to change your oil when needed. You have to change the plugs, get it tuned up, get new tires when that's needed, etc. The idea here is that you take away most of that responsibility, and what we're offering with adaptive data protection is the ability to automate all of those operations. So it's really like driving a car that's completely pre-configured, ready to go, and not only that, you don't change the tires, you don't change the oil, you don't put gas in. You don't do tune-ups. You don't even drive it. It drives itself, okay? So it's really a simplified experience for data protection. It continuously delivers the maintenance that's needed as well as analytics. What it's not, though it's very, very capable of being so, is data protection as a service. And the reason I say it's not really is because what we're offering here are software part numbers under the IBM process. We have Passport Advantage part numbers. In the next few minutes, we'll be talking about what this really is. Well, it's some software. It's Spectrum Protect software. It's some Cobalt Iron software. It's some hardware, server hardware and storage hardware, pre-configured. It's a pre-configured CAN Spectrum Protect server. You might say, hey, that's an appliance. And if you say that and you say, okay, Cobalt Iron's an appliance, well, I guess you could say that, and that would be true. But if you say that, that's really probably only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% of what this capability is. So it can be offered as a service, and that's a great opportunity for our partners out there. Adaptive data protection with Cobalt Iron allows you to deliver automated Spectrum Protect maintenance and operations and improve data protection service levels with predictive analytics. This, to you, our partners out there, this will increase your margins in your Spectrum Protect services, reduce your operational costs, and allow you to focus on expanding your customer base and to focus on additional services to your customers and consulting. Take a couple charts and talk about what Cobalt Iron is. It delivers analytics. It has automated problem resolution. It does not just monitoring of the Spectrum Protect server and backup operations. We can do some of that, right, in the operations center. This is much more than that. It's monitoring the entire data protection infrastructure, including hardware servers, storage devices, networking, activities around data protection, and comparing them to what's happening across a broad spectrum of data protection environments, and it's able to do predictive problem analysis and prediction. So it's much more than just reporting and state reporting. There's predictive aspects and analytic aspects of this. It also does continuous code updates of the Spectrum Protect server, so you're always at the latest release. In addition, if there's some new best practice that Spectrum Protect development has come up with, or our partners or Cobalt Iron themselves are very, very experienced with Spectrum Protect, as they come up with best practices, these are automatically implemented in the design and distributed, whether it's updates to control files, things like that, or configurations, they're done automatically. Does infrastructure environment-wide monitoring. It automates the server operations, so a lot of the server activities that you might spend time worrying about and scheduling are done automatically. It has client install packages that assist with that process. Also will help you reduce the overall cost of data protection. This also includes the operational management, the ongoing daily operational management of managing data protection operations. Some customers actually pay for that as a service, and that can be recaptured. Those costs can be recaptured. It also includes operational automation. We can see more of the description about Cobalt Iron, the solution overview for monitoring and automating the entire data protection environment. The solution itself, if you look in the box towards the right side, there's basically 4 components of what we're offering with Cobalt Iron. There's the Spectrum Protect. You can see the Spectrum Protect logo representing Spectrum Protect software. There's Cobalt Iron ADP, Adaptive Data Protection. That's also software. Then there's a box. There is a server box with compute power, and then there's, on the lower right, the disk and cloud icons. There's storage, okay, and that storage, again, can be flash, disk. Typically, it's IBM storage, unless there's some other special quest on that. It can also be cloud storage as well. Okay, so those are the 4 components. We'll come back to that, but it's a black box. Again, you can call it an appliance, but if you do, you're really, really underselling and you're really not fully understanding the value of what this is. It removes the management of the most complex parts of backup. Spectrum Protect, the best data protection technology in the industry. Cobalt Iron, these offerings allow you to deploy as the simplest data protection solution out there. And again, it includes automatic code updates, etc. It's really the adaptive data protection offering, automation of Spectrum Protect server tasks. It automates the management of the servers. It automates monitoring, troubleshooting, problem detection, and prediction and remediation in a lot of times. It has a nice dashboard. Spectrum Protect Operations Center becomes not really needed. It's still there and available, so you can go and monitor and visualize what's happening. It still has that value, but those operations themselves go away with Cobalt Iron. Advanced, not just reporting, but also analytics. Let's go back to the 4 different components of Spectrum Protect with adaptive data protection. I want you to be very clear on what this is. Okay, so at the bottom, it lists the 4 different things. So first of all, a Cobalt Iron solution will have Spectrum Protect licensing. This can be existing license entitlement, or it could be new license entitlement. So it can use Spectrum Protect licensing in ELAs, or if the customer has any kind of other entitlement, it can leverage that. It could be front-end, back-end. The second portion is also software. It's the Cobalt Iron Adaptive Data Protection. This is licensed on terabyte capacity back-end, and it's analytics-driven data protection. It brings those capabilities and automation. Third area is the Accelerator. Now, this is compute resource for the Spectrum Protect server. It's a completely boxed, self-contained delivery of Spectrum Protect server, and it includes the Spectrum Protect licenses. It includes the Adaptive Data Protection software, and it includes storage. Typically, it's a completely boxed. This is what you might say, well, that's an appliance, but again, it's much more than that. Typically, a Cobalt Iron solution is delivered and proposed when they're looking for a new Spectrum Protect server. The Adaptive Data Protection software, we really leverage that. You license it separate, but it's really included with the Accelerator. You don't purchase that separately and put it on an existing Spectrum Protect server.
Yeah, existing Spectrum Protect servers would not be managed by ADP.
Accelerators come in different flavors. There's 6 different sizes, if you will. There's actually a virtual version of the Accelerator. So this is basically a virtual appliance. There's also 5 different hardware sizes, and that's micro, small, medium, large, and enterprise.
Quick summary on base maximum and logical is base capacity is what we say for a target for the environment. So if somebody wants to back up and protect stored capacity of 1, 4, 5, 10, 25. We're essentially creating a starting point. Quite frankly, an enterprise could manage 1 terabyte, but economically it's just not a fit. Maximum is the maximum amount of storage that we assign to the systems in those sizing tiers, micro, small, medium, and so on. But of note, those are rather conservative. So we're being very, very careful in terms of the proper sizing for these. For example, larges can scale substantially above 150 and so on. So those are sizing. And then logical is looking at this from a deduplication perspective, what a customer's protected footprint would be after compression and deduplication. And we see this consistently exceeding what those targets are just because of Spectrum Protect's efficiencies around compression and deduplication with the latest codes. Like Greg said, we've got the latest code levels deployed everywhere. How do we size between these, or how do we select them? And that really is the balance between two axes. One is how many systems are being protected, and we'll have some guidance for you on if it's 10 systems or if it's 1,000 systems. It drives a different compute requirement and thus a different stage in the tier. If it's 1,000 systems, we're not talking about a small or a micro, even though it might be 3 terabytes of data. The flip side is that if it's 7 systems but 700 terabytes of data, we're most likely also not talking about a small or a medium. So it's balancing those two sizing dynamics.
So we just talked about the sort of on-premise accelerator options. There are also options for delivering the accelerators in cloud. It could be Bluemix. There's actually part numbers for Bluemix, Amazon, Azure, and Google. Cobalt Iron, these Cobalt Iron software also gives you new capability that, including things like management of Amazon EBS snapshot. So you can do elastic block storage from Amazon. They have snapshotting. Some customers are starting to do that to protect workloads in Amazon. Those are fairly primitive snapshots. They don't have application integration, so it's not a complete solution. So it's good to have real data protection like Spectrum Protect in addition to that. But Cobalt Iron can actually manage those in conjunction with Spectrum Protect. So, Richard, and also I understand that you also have orchestration capability to allow orchestration of Spectrum Protect via REST APIs and JSON.
Indeed, yeah, Paige, there's the conduits. Cobalt Iron Conduit is an in-premise, so in Amazon or on the customer's data center environment system that is provided as a virtual machine that allows for that enterprise service integration. It's a complete RESTful instrumentation of what ADP provides. So from provisioning to decommissioning to schedule changes to policy updates to associations and such, all of that is controlled and managed through a RESTful API if the customer wants to integrate that in. Through the conduit itself, customers have now access to complete LDAP and Active Directory integration, including very advanced group management and mapping for proper access control and visibility, two-factor authentication, ticketing integration into Remedy, ServiceNow, et cetera, as well as the orchestration, Greg, that you were referencing, Chef, Puppet, ServiceNow, vRealize, et cetera, to be able to integrate data protection into the IT and business processes rather than it being an afterthought like we see in a lot of enterprises. All of that is delivered through an MSP CSP API class set. There's a RESTful JSON interface for customers to do provision control and data access. We do things well beyond what Spectrum Protect does today. For example, what Greg referenced earlier around Amazon managing the snapshots, integrating directly into Amazon control, creating EBS snapshots and replicating to secondary regions and copying to secondary regions, just to be correct for Amazon, as well as things like older environments that are traditionally not supported but experienced at customers, such as iSeries, if we talk about the Spectrum Protect support, as well as external support for that from VTLs and direct RMS management.
If you go on to the next chart, fly through a couple deployments, examples, sort of the architect. This is sort of a high-level view of flexibility of Cobalt Iron, adaptive data protection, and Spectrum Protect. As we talked about, you can deploy the accelerators in the major public clouds. We actually have part numbers for those 4 major clouds you see there. You can run them on-premise, certainly the accelerators. You can run them in a private cloud, maybe a private OpenStack cloud. You can run virtual accelerators. If you go on to the next chart, sort of a high-level architecture, again, showing how it can be deployed. It can manage backups just from clients only, and that can be backed up to accelerators in a cloud. It can replicate between accelerators, and that's basically part of the base architecture. Do a hybrid cloud model as a typical deployment. If the customer really desires, you can leverage existing storage as well, including tape. Go on to the next chart, it starts talking about the different cloud deployments. You could do public cloud deployment. On the next chart, probably more common is the hybrid cloud, where you have an on-premise accelerator. It can be very, very small. And then you have, replication to a Spectrum Protect accelerator in a public cloud or another data center. These are all managed automatically across these hybrid cloud environments. Another example of where this value comes in, that many, many remote offices, now you have a slam dunk on any environment. You have the right solution, whether it's small all the way up to gigantic. Richard, I believe you've worked with a number of customers recently that have many, many hundreds or maybe even over thousands of remote offices.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And what's been fun is rather than having the customers build custom integration or build custom management to do specific tasks, or having to manually climb into the cockpits of every one of these Spectrum Protect servers on some class of basis, sometimes we're seeing maybe a couple months between getting into the cockpits. Now it's all centrally managed autonomically for a customer.
I've worked with a lot of large companies that might have some remote Spectrum Protect servers, and they're usually 4 to 5 years behind on the release level. With Cobalt Iron solution, they're going to be up to date on and leveraging that greatest best capabilities and latest capabilities and fixes. And then private cloud, just another option on the architecture. Let's move on to a very important subject here, solution sizing. Richard, could you take us through sizing?
Absolutely. So solution sizing is art and science. What we've done is, as part of the accelerator design, is provided standardized building blocks that scale up dynamically as customer workloads and capacities changes over time. To be able to step into initial sizing, Cobalt Iron and my Deal Desk team is here to be able to support you guys at all steps. The tool is what we call a CI sizer, and this is a tool that's going to help with both collecting the data and assumptions that are based around the solution. So inputting data such as system counts, source data terabytes, different locations, retention data, and such at different levels of fidelity. We may only know I only need 30 days, or we don't know, and so we can base some of those around, okay, maybe 15 days for this class of system or data, or 35 days around that one. It allows us to be able to model and scenario that out quickly and efficiently. There's also detailed options for across multiple sites. We're currently engaged in an environment where it's a little over 160 facilities. We've got a variety of different sizes, from small facilities that have just a few terabytes through centralized facilities that have dozens of petabytes. And being able to pull that all together in the sizer is what's going to help drive a complete output that says, here's the quote information for you guys to reference, as well as bid templates and actual part numbers. So here's a complete set of the parts that are necessary: Spectrum Protect, Accelerators, ADP. Here's a couple of customer examples. Very simple, 2 data centers. There's 310 terabytes of back-end data in Spectrum Protect, and they wanted the solution to be able to transition from tape to replication between primary and secondary locations. Sufficient bandwidth was already in place, and so the solution came down to 4 very simple components: Spectrum Protect, 310 terabytes of that Spectrum Protect suite, 310 terabytes of ADP to match, the 2 enterprise accelerators, so primary and secondary site accelerators, and then Storwize V5030 deployed at both facilities, 150 terabytes. Those combined produce the entire purchase solution for the customer to be able to stand up, bolt them into the racks, and start consuming the data. Second site, large distributed. So this is one of the environments that Greg was referencing earlier. 2 centralized data centers, 1.2 petabytes of back-end data in the data centers, 40 distribution centers distributed across North America. There's 200 terabytes in that environment. And then the remote sites, there's just over 1,000 remote sites with a total of 400 terabytes of data. What was interesting about this is that leveraging Spectrum Protect rather than data domain for the efficiencies, we're able to optimize and displace a secondary data protection product as well as the data domains to be able to drive Spectrum Protect efficiently and effectively, whereas economically they wouldn't consider it before, as well as the ADP at 1.8 petabytes for the entire footprint, which includes the 2 data centers with enterprise accelerators, the small accelerators for those remote locations, which has internal storage without having to put the expense and complexity of a storage array at each one of those facilities, and then again, similar internal micro accelerators with no storage array, separating from their virtual stack that's at the remote location. So production and backup were separated, and operated independently. That entire solution then combined for, again, same 4 layers: Spectrum Protect licensing, ADP licensing, accelerators, and then storage at the 2 core data centers. Very quickly, as you saw before, there were the 4 components that are being purchased and being deployed for the customer. First is the purchasing of the software and the accelerators. The accelerators are delivered to the customer ready. So they're ready to unbox, bolt into a rack, connect power and network with our crayon diagram. So they're very simple to follow by anyone. That process then completes with hitting the power on button. The accelerator phones home to Bluemix, gets its instructions and updates, and at that point, we're ready to install clients. The clients can be installed through the ADP interface by hitting select, hitting the install button, or they can be installed if they want to use, the customer wants to use their own software distribution like SCCM and such. At that point, data protection is ready to go. They can turn knobs in terms of retentions or add policies and do what they'd like to do, but they're production ready essentially same day. The second one is just existing clients. The key thing here is that we also have the ability to migrate data off of the existing TSM or Spectrum Protect instances in a clean and consistent method. So the customers can transition into an ADP environment without having to have significant outages, upgrades, transition times, and such. We can take new workloads and integrate in and merge in the old data that they'd like to be able to maintain moving forward. That also lets us go revalidate the data in the environment and recompress or compress for the first time and deduplicate all the data coming into the environment. There's a slide in here about this, is migrating the legacy data is both definition and policies can be migrated across, as well as the data itself. Professional services around this is what we refer to as the last mile, and it's extremely important to us. Backup administrators don't disappear. The business partner is extremely important in delivering this. From our perspective, customers not only have an expectation of simplicity around this, but they also have an expectation in terms of the management of their environment. So where we've traditionally been, if you will, underneath the hood for the backup infrastructure, now we're actually customer facing and helping them with how do I design and implement the SAP HANA workloads? How do I properly do VMware and integration and deployment and protection? And being able to help customers roll through that client side and the professional services, whether it's partners or IBM lab services, are really important to us to accomplish that. So back to you, Greg.
On chart 26, the customer experience here is basically it's ready to go.
Web interface, so available anytime, anywhere.
And then what about on the solution deployment lifecycle? I think you already covered this, that you have phases and you guys have assistance all along the path of deployment as well. Was there any other points you wanted to make on this one?
A key component here is that we have a very well-defined, very well-exercised methodology we take customers through. Data centers, remote sites, and cloud workloads to be able to deliver a simplified, consistent experience that moves very efficiently and effectively for customers. So it's not, okay, now we've bought this, what do we do? There's a very quick, very elegant onboarding process that we do for customers. So the key points that we usually point out for customers is the solution architecture. It's the consistency of the standardized methodology and building blocks provides very quick simplicity as well as consistency for customers. The second thing is that the backup server software and infrastructure is fully managed in terms of the software levels, the system patches, the security, as well as even down to, on Storwize, SVC code levels and monitoring if there's any hardware failures and such. All of that is managed by ADP and coordinated with the IBM's TSS support teams worldwide. And then there are additional things that customers benefit from, especially in a widely distributed environment, transitioning from tape into a disk only, is things like our traffic shaping for replication and offsiting to be citizens in a complex WAN environment, and then being able to provide that centralized enterprise management of the entire footprint, rather than having to manage each individual instance, whether it's Spectrum Protect or Net Backup and so on. We eliminate that complexity around doing it yourself. But what we really do is that there's three key elements that we deliver around data protection success. It's the complexity around people, product, and process. We automate the human tasks through analytics, reducing the operational costs. We're seeing customers up to 90% reduction there. We leverage the Spectrum Protect, the deduping compression, and the analytics to be able to reduce the infrastructure costs by 50%. And then we also eliminate the process failures that come through the automation of this data protection workloads and the monitoring and management that comes from this. And what it comes down to is that we save time, money, and key IT staff resources. So a quick tour through the user interface. What I'm going to do is I'm going to log into this. What we've got is just a quick test landscape. And what I'm going to show you is an environment. We've also enabled two-factor authentication for this environment just to quickly show this. And it's just one of the two factors that we integrate with, like Duo, where we've got customers using this. So we want to verify who's who, especially for some of the advanced features and functions in the environment. So we initially sign in, and we're greeted by the dashboard. And the dashboard allows us to have a very quick at-a-glance. Let's take a look at what's been happening and drill into areas where there are issues. And this is pretty nice. This is an environment where we've seen a fall off to 0. So what we've gone from is red to yellow in this environment. It allows us to be able to manage multiple organizations and sub-organizations. So one enterprise may have, and we've got customer examples like this, they may organize by geography, so North America, Latin America, EMEA, AP, etc., or we may have different divisions and have different systems and managements inside there. So take a look at these tiles. We've got information presented to us, so we can select what tiles we want. We can also drill into them to say, hey, what's been happening? I'm going to move the Organizations tab out of the way, and what we can take a look at is that the system that's been having issues allows us to say, I don't care where the system is at, I'm not sure which instance this may be on, I'm not certain which accelerator it's replicating to, and so on. I don't need to know that. I need to know where the issues are. If we take a look, we can see the system's had a handful of issues. So as a quick glance, what this dashboard does is it takes away all the noise, all the complexity of what to log into, what to go look at, and drills you right to what you want to go take a look at, or what you need to take a look at. So in this case, I'm going to drill down into this one specific system where we've had these misses. We've got a Domino file system client that's been missing. Wonder what's been happening there. And we can take a look at failure. And the failure information itself not only tells me what's been happening, but also gives me the messages and information from Spectrum Protect to drill directly into what's been happening, what the performance has been like on those individual jobs. Allows me to get right to the data and information I need. Also allows me to be able to manage backup scheduling, deferring and creating, and client options all centrally from here instead of having to manage this on a system-by-system basis. These can also be stamped out, templatized, if you will. A complete inventory of the systems is available either by organization, by sub-organization, by location, by project, by group, however we'd like to see it, whether it's AD integrated or not, and different classes of platforms, whether it's virtualized, whether it's Windows, Linux, and so on. We can also take a look at, let's go back to that Domino system as an example. Here is multiple protection clients. So we have Domino TDP that everyone knows and a backup archive client. All of that is, if you will, managed and worked against a single system, and we can drive multiple classes of events. If we take a look at that file system client again, not only can we see what's been happening, but if it's a fresh install or a reinstall, we can drive the installation directly from this interface. There's also the opportunities to be able to take the client installation packages and provide it to customers for lightly attended installs or software distribution. We can also predefine additional client actions that we can say we'd like them to run now or drive full system backups if we'd like them to on a dynamic or on an ad hoc basis. We can define users for the environment, which allows us to be able to specify some of the default user roles like business only or read only or standard or administrative users. And we also have, I'll go to the organization, the ability to control things in the organization, whether we have, the branding for this. So every time we deliver this to a customer, this is branded for each customer or each service provider, managed service provider, or reseller that we work with for their data protection service. If they're not using AD or LDAP integration, password controls for the organization, as well as billing and group integration for different classes and different levels of billing to and from the environment. Reporting is all analytics driven. Not only are we filtering through and solving problems and identifying and getting ahead of problems or capacity issues, we also have a variety of reports in our global catalog of assets. So a couple quick examples here is an executive dashboard to be able to see, here's what the environment looks like. All right, I don't want to see Linux systems. How much do I have here? Or what's been happening in the environment in terms of protected data and how much has been deduplicated. Trending, backup jobs, and things like that. Daily status, summarized table class data to be able to have this available. All of this is printable, emailable, PDF, XML, JSON delivered, CSV, however customers want to consume that. And then additionally, from a historical perspective, from the initiation of the delivery of a product, from day 1 through day N, all data, all historical operational metadata about a customer, system, nodes, policies, and such is fully maintained, auditable, and reviewable. Then finally, from an administration perspective, there are data protection services, one or more for a customer. In this environment, it's one primary on-prem and then a secondary that is actually in Blue Mix. So we have primary workloads on both. That's what the green says. I can provision new systems to both of them. There's a variety of platforms that we can provide and make available to this organization and its sub-organizations and other organizations they want to provide data protection services to. We can manage the policies, configuration of classic management classes and versioning and so on. Creating new retention policies is all managed here. Pricing and how it's priced is all managed from this, as well as a protection class, which is essentially the roll-up of all of those components. What platforms, starting at the bottom, any run-now configurations, protection client options, policies that we want as we stamp out new systems, and default backup schedules associated with the systems. How many environments are actually managed, how many systems in the environment, how much data is all rolled up in this view in terms of oversight. And the last one is just locations, if there's multiple locations to manage for an existing or a single customer. So that's a quick tour through the user interface. Greg, what I'm going to do is hand it to you.
Okay, thanks, and appreciate you taking us through that. Even though it's very quick, it's always good to get a look and feel. But I'd like to reemphasize that a lot of times you're not using that interface, right? Because a lot of those actions and the operations are actually automated, but that user interface is there to go and navigate that data protection, the entire infrastructure, not just the Spectrum Protect, but things around it that make up the data protection infrastructure. This just fits perfectly in with our Spectrum software-defined storage capabilities, where we have Spectrum software-defined storage messages, ease of use, delivering storage as a service, global data availability and accessibility, storage and data infrastructure flexibility and delivering of that, and dramatic reduction of costs. This really fits that model, which is why one of the many reasons we're happy to have it in the portfolio. With that, we'll finish up, and thank you for your time.